So a bit of introduction. And so I was born in Israel, and after finishing high school, I wanted to volunteer, but I didn't want to go to the army. And so I was very fortunate to go to volunteer for a year. I did civil service at an education center for sustainable living, where I was helping schools grow food. And From that, I went to university to study environmental studies and sustainable agriculture and peace leadership. That's where I met my wife. And since 2006, we've been traveling together. We've been celebrated 18 years together last week. And In 2012, we moved to New Zealand. I worked at the Koanga Institute and then at Epicurean. Managing different organic operations. Epicurean was a 30-acre organic market garden in the Hawke's Bay. My background in permaculture, I did my PDC in France in 2007, and I did my teacher's training course and finished my 3-year diploma in 2010. My highlight of my diploma studies was our wedding. So we used permaculture design to do that event, which was wonderful. And I've got no pictures to show you here. My grandfather was actually Kiwi. My family arrived in New Zealand in the 1840s, and when he was young, he was 30, he decided to move to Israel. But when we moved here, we had lots and lots and lots of family, which was really exciting. And we have settled. After we finished working in the Hawke's Bay and got a residency, we wanted to go to the Coromandel. A cousin of mine was living in Thames, and he told us that these people, Jeanette and Harry, have an organic farm, and they have a space that sometimes people come and stay there for some time. And so we should go and meet them. And we did, and they offered us to help them out on the farm and live on the farm. And that ended up to be an amazing relationship where their generosity and kindness have overwhelmed us. And after a year that we lived there as we were market gardening on a different farm, they invited us to join the farm as partners. And because we only bought part of only bought into the land value and not any buildings, we were very privileged to be able to do that. We are building our house at the moment, and I'll talk about that. So Pakaraka Farm, where I've been for the last 10 years, is 215 acres. Harry and Jeanette decided that 180 acres of it will be retired from grazing with their previous partners. It was grazed from 15 meters at river level to 300 and something on top of the mountain. And they did not join the emission trading scheme because they didn't want somebody else to benefit from offsetting that carbon, so purely locking that carbon. And so I can talk about that for ages. They've done amazing things like planted 100 olive trees, planted 100 chestnut trees, which they've thinned out to the most productive ones. So we harvest about 2 tons of chestnuts a year. We harvest between 500 to 700 kgs of olives most years. We've got shelf shearing sheep because Harry was a professional shearer and did not want to pay somebody else for shearing. And so Harry's with us, and we see him often. We're 9 people living on the farm. We're off grid. We have our own water supply, electricity, and even an internet tower. If you want, I can talk about that. What we've been doing, since I was 20, I decided during university that I want to be a farmer. I want to see, we've got this huge problem with food production. How can food look like? How can sustainable food production on a small scale look like? And I didn't know it will be a 1/4 acre, but that's what ended up being. This is our site, our marginal site, which, as you can see, the slope is facing to the southwest. But it was lots of fun and games, lots of permaculture insights in and out. So within 12 months, this is what the gardens look like. We have learned how to produce about $100,000 to $120,000 worth of vegetables and between 10 to 12 tons of fresh food on a 1/4 acre on this site every single year. It is a challenge. It is by no means the end. You can do a lot more. But this is what we've been doing for the last 10 years. We've been selling at markets to groceries for the last 4 years of our production. And this is some of our main strategies. We have managed to sell 90% of everything we grow 7 kilometers from the farm. So hyper local, you know, solar powered. We use our solar system to run our cool room and electric car to do the deliveries. And we've been doing 2 deliveries of salads. We did about 4 to 5 tons of salads, about 25 different commercial crops. We delivered salads twice a week, every week since October 2014. May 2024, we have decided to make some big changes and to close the fresh green lines that we were doing. My wife and I decided we want some new challenges, and we want yes, and I can talk about lots of things, but we decided that we wanted some changes. So I'm going to talk to you a bit about some of the changes that we're doing. Primarily, I've moved on to, well, not moved on. So first of all, we're going to grow heaps of stuff. We are growing heaps of stuff. The gardens look amazing. And I'll show you some pictures of our garden from yesterday that I took. I am going to move into teaching. I'm doing now a master's in education, and I'm going to be working at secondary schools teaching horticulture and sustainability. Really, really exciting. And I think that will, because a lot of people, think permaculture, think sustainability, and we think gardening. But actually, it's so much bigger, as most of you know. Other things we do, we ferment. We love preserving our food. We grow pretty much all of our own food. Who here had read The Abundant Garden? Awesome. Who here has seen our country calendar episode? Awesome. Who here has seen this book, The Abundant Kitchen? Awesome. We found out that it was a really terrible idea to make them look so similar. Still, 5,000 copies were sold in the first few months when it came out. Both were bestsellers. The Abundant Garden, just to show off a bit, it was #1 bestseller for nonfiction in New Zealand for 2 weeks when it came out. So the corpus is for New Zealanders that are passionate about gardening, and they want to, they're not afraid to learn more. Besides growing all these foods, we ferment and preserve, and that's part of our ethos. Before I had in Israel, when I remember as a university student, I used to join a CSA, and I used to buy fresh vegetables from a farmer, and I used to ask the farmer, "Hey, I know you probably grow, can I buy your a winter supply of squash? So I want to learn how to preserve my squash for the year. Can I please?" In this book, we've covered things like lacto fermentation, pickling. Hi, everyone who's just joined us. Really exciting life. So we make, this is, for example, do you know what this is? Kombucha? No? Good guess? Honey wine. So these are different types of honey wines: blueberry, peach, rose, elderflower. Whatever inspires me that we've got, that we can use, we'll do. Mead, yeah, honey wine, mead. So I want to share some adventures of what we're doing. Maybe before I do that, just say that while my journey is taking me to continue in education and see what we can do that, my wife, which has really been a partner with me all this time, has done some amazing work, different projects. One is Regenerative Game Jam. She's now doing her PhD with University of Auckland to basically the biggest media outlet right now is video games. There's more people playing video games. More than 50% of New Zealanders are playing video games every single day, more than watching TV or Netflix or anything. But there is the representation of regenerative and organic farms there is something like this. So she's did for 3 years. She instigated an event that invited people to come and design games, collaborate together, and create those environments. So she's looking at how can she help people who create games showcase regenerative and organic farming. So that's really exciting, and she's amazing. We love experimenting. That's what it's all about. Every year we do things a little bit differently. Hi, everyone who's just joined us. I learned a lot about myself over the last few years, that I was diagnosed quite early at a young age with ADHD, and which means that I can go so focused into something that I'm interested in. And if I lose interest, I go away. And so every year doing something different, every new season is a new challenge. One thing that I've been doing for the last 10 years, every season, now for the 11th season, we have been growing tomatoes in our tunnel house. Every year we do it differently. We grow between 8 to 20 varieties, different spacing, different trellising, different mulching. Here we've been doing, this was 2 years ago, we've put in clover, subterranean clover underneath to enrich the soil with nitrogen and create a live cover. Of course, we also had some productive spinach in the end. We have ginger now for the third year growing in the tunnel house. This worked great. I did sow the clover a bit too thick, but because every 6 to 8 weeks, I put another layer of compost on top of the soil, I just decided I'm going to smother the clover. And so it kind of balanced it out a bit. So that was an exciting learning. I would do this again. Last year, anybody seen these pictures? So we have self-shearing sheep that I've mentioned. And we usually have been selling it through the sales yard, but the value of our self-shearing sheep, whatever is actually left over that we do shear once a year, is so low value. We've been gathering it in bales, and we had 4 bales of wool that we did not use. And I thought, okay, let's try this. So put it on. I started by putting it like this. Then we used the same amount and put it on the other side. My wife never took a picture. If you've seen any of our Facebook or Instagram, so she posted there with Pakaraka Permaculture. This photo, which we thought nothing of it because we experiment all the time, 10 million views. It's people were not. I think it causes a lot of things. What type of feelings come to you when you see this picture? Looks like home, cozy. Looks amazing. Does anybody feel sad? Wool is being used for that and not something else. That's something that came up. Apparently, in Mongolia and Morocco, a lot of people were like, wow, we can do this with our wool. So I'm sure other people have tried it. We've done it this way. It did do better than the clover, but very similarly. It worked well. My daughter, though, I've got an 11-year-old and a 14-year-old, and very, very early on, we knew that everything that we grow, first, they eat as much as they like. And so when the organic shop, they know that I have early cucumbers, they said, okay, let us know when your daughter stops eating the first ones and then start giving it to us. And mind you, we sell them between a ton to a ton and a half of cucumbers a year. And we'll still do this year as well. She hated it. She thought the smell was terrible and there's a bit of gorse on the wool. I liked it. It suppressed the weeds. It enriched the soil, kept the moisture in. There are different trace elements that the wool releases. I think the reflection of the light was really good. And so we got something like about 750 kgs of tomatoes last year. So great question. If you look at it now, I thought it would last for 2 years, but I guess partly because of the biological activity, there is hardly nothing. Like I can't even cover one bed with it now. What I did do is I pushed to the edges because this tunnel house is supposed to be, we improvise a lot. So it suppresses the weeds on the edges. And the geese are now suppressing the weeds from the outside, but working all together there. So other really exciting experiment that we've been doing, I keep laughing, and probably you're the best crowd to say this to. About a year and a half ago, I became a very, very wealthy man. I've been starting to get a weekly delivery or twice weekly delivery of fish frames and fish guts from the local wharf. And there was an organic farmer on the other side of the valley that retired before we started 10 years ago. And a year and a half ago, I got a call from the wharf. Great fish and chips, though. Tim's the Wharf, if you haven't gone to, if you're passing through. And they said, look, the farmer that we've been delivering to for the last 30 years said he just needs to stop now. It's enough for him. Would you like to? And I said, of course. Actually, I didn't know if I can cope with something like this, so I ignored. I can't. It took me a bit of time to process this, but I said yes. And so we experimented. The first months of experimentation, receiving between 100 to 200 kgs of fish guts a week, was a bit smelly. I have had we've been employing 2 part-time workers for the last 5 years. And one of them is the most kindest, gentlest person. And he was just about to start his own market garden and he's about to leave. But he just told me, Yotam, this can't go on. And so I decided I'm going to make the fish compost out of the farm with a system that we've done, which I really, really am proud of and happy with how it's working, is that I'm getting a delivery of wood chips from the local arborist, as I have been. I probably got about 300 to 400 cubic meters over the last 10 years from them. I give them I give them vegetables and pay them just a little bit. They know every time they can just drop it off. They have areas that they can do it. So they do that. I spread a little bit. I got these. I went to the local tank place, water tanks, and asked them, I need something a little bit bigger than a compost bin. What do you have? Maybe you've got some offcuts or something like that. And so this was a reject from a different project. And so I cut the tops off. It's tapered. Empty in the bottom, goes on top of the wood chips. The people from the wharf come in, drop 1 or 2 crates, then shovel a bit of wood chips on, then put more in, and they do that by themselves twice a week, and then twice a year. Unfortunately, I need to hire an excavator and play for a weekend, like I did last weekend. And one of the things I do is empty our big compost toilets, but also I then mix this up with whatever is in here. If I need to, with a bit more wood chips, we keep putting vegetable scraps and also biochar that we make on the farm. And then I let it sit. So we are making now between 10 to 15 cubic meters of ready-made fish compost. Really, really exciting. It was something that I didn't know how we're going to make our own on-farm fertility, and it's really exciting. So I love the system, and any leaching things just go to the wood chips, so it's not too smelly. Still better to be a few 100 meters away from everything else. So that's happening there. A few things happening on our farm. So many of you've seen our top garden in many ways, which my daughter Dina is in here. Our new dog for 2.5 years now, Nelly, which is a lovely one. And so that garden is, at least half of it is now transitioning into an orchard, because I don't need 1,500 square meters. I only need 1,000, probably not even 1,000. Our bottom garden looks like this. So we've expanded to a garden site that has no shade over winter. And so we've expanded this garden next to where we're building a house at the moment. We do a lot of different things. One experiment one year was 40 cubic meters of wood chips. I just calculated in my head driving here. It's about 44 cubic meters of wood chips per bed. And that was amazing. It has its own challenges. It's harder for water to get in, so we need to water a lot more. I always think that whenever you see a vegetable struggling, check how moist is the soil, and most likely by modifying the moisture levels, everything will go all right. And it happens to me all the time, because even though I have automatic irrigation for some things, it's never bulletproof. Another cool thing that we started doing, so this is our garden from yesterday, our bottom garden, 500 square meters made into terraces. We've got edging of evergreen and Russian comfrey on the edges, and that stops the kikuyu and the couch grass from coming in. So we've had in this 500 square meter garden, we've had 20 cubic meters of rocks that came from the mountains. So that was, whoops, how did I do that? That was a little bit of a challenge to move. But we've done that, and it's a really great space. We produce so much food over there, so much easier. I have fixed some of my, a lot of things we do are really, part of it is because of our budget was really small to start with. We do something, we observe, we make some changes. We always have feedback loops, and that really guides us. And when we did a big jump from the first quarter-acre garden to another 500 square meters, we took a lot of that in, and we've realized that landscaping was a big barrier, that we needed to have either native shelter belts, or we need to have edging a lot more sorted and access a lot more sorted, a lot more energy efficient, which we've done in this situation. I have decided one of the reasons that we've done the change is that 2 years ago, I started working on this house. I'm building it as an owner builder. I've done the foundations. It's a kit set from Framos. So I did have lots of help from friends to put in the wall. So it's 100 mils of South Island pine, treated with a non-heavy metal preservative, 120 square meter house. Hopefully we'll move in by next winter. So we knew it will take us about 3 years to build, because we were juggling this between the other things. And yeah, I've got lots of wood chips planted in the front. We've made a little pond. I'm doing heaps of drainage. It will be another food forest all around it. Lots of native plants that we're organizing. Really, really exciting. I love doing that. So our life is really interesting. Yes. Yes. And I'm sure people can help here. Getting rid of kikuyu to start with is not hard. And I just, because in my head, I have one thing to say here and then I'll answer to you. Going back to our bigger permaculture view and alternative economies, we finance this house through the Living Economies network, through the savings pools. Who here have heard about savings pools? Awesome. Saving pools are a group of people coming together, people who all know each other, putting money into a shared bank account, and then members of that pool can ask from everyone to take a loan, to borrow money. But the way that it goes, it's a zero interest loan that goes that if I borrowed $1,000 and let's say over 1 year, I will put in not $1,000, I'll put in $2,000. But by the end of the year, once I've put in all those $2,000, I can withdraw $1,000 back. So every month, half of my payment goes to repay my payment and half goes for other people to use. Zero interest. We've done that with close to, it's over $400,000. So we are not connected to the bank. A bank would not lend to us as farmers. We own the land communally, so we cannot actually put a mortgage on the land. So that was an alternative finance system that worked for us and the generosity of so many people. And also, of course, it's very financially secure, and everybody knows that we're not jeopardizing. But the house is not only special in many ways, it's special because of the way that it was financed for people. In terms of edging, so I'll go even back to kikuyu. The problem when I start a new garden, I often graze or mow as hard as I can, and then I will usually put weed mat on, or I'll put wood chips on, as was our picture. I usually use weed mat because it's just easier for me to manage, and I just reuse them. High quality grade UV stabilized stuff. So the kikuyu, if you just try and stop kikuyu to kill off from this area, you can put, many of you have already killed kikuyu or couch grass in the past, put a bucket somewhere, left it for a few months, came back, lifted it. Oh, it's pretty much dead. But there's still some roots kind of under there. If you do this on a larger scale, let's say the room, then the roots will not be able to keep having life from the outside, so everything will die. So killing kikuyu, really easy, takes usually about 2 months if it's not too big before. It just needs to be on a larger area. So it needs to stop. There's a few different processes that happen. It can die mostly because it doesn't have access to light, so it cannot photosynthesize. The technical term is occultation, and it could also die because there's no. If it's very dry and it's not being watered, so because of the dry, it could also die because of the heat. I use weed net because it's easy, but you can use anything you like. So it's a short-term mechanism for me to kill invasive plants, or basically to start a new garden. And then the edging, there's many solutions for edging, and I think all of us have battled with it. How can we do that? I don't like to mow regularly, so it doesn't really work. I have a problem that the kikuyu does want to come out. I use chickens and geese on the perimeter of some of my gardens, and I use weed mat in some places, but weed mat is not a long-term solution. If you just leave weed mat, something will grow over it. So I plant it heavily with natives or with herbs. In the beginning, I used all these exotic permaculture plants we all know about, but no, those kids, I won't curse, but use natives. Rob will probably enlighten us more. You want to create a biodiversity, a live ecosystem that it's really an ecosystem service. Use natives. Natives will do all the functions of everything you want. You don't need an exotic Tagasasti or I'm thinking of Judas tree, which is like a tree that I'm very used to for my local environment, nitrogen fixer, edible leaves, edible flowers. just use natives. Just find ways to incorporate them from first everything. Vetiver is a good one as a border plant. I know some people use certain types of grasses. I don't remember the name, but there are grasses that don't spread but clump. Um, I think you can use anything you like. I have rosemary and I've got thyme in different places. My problem with thyme is that it dies because there's too much water, because I water the garden frequently. Yeah. Yep. I would say that I had success and failures, but I think you'll have success and failures with everything. But thank you for that, Adam. Um, I'll move on. What I will look is at the time. Yes, please. Please. Kumra. Elliot Coleman, a very veteran organic farmer, he started the revolution, the kind of the second wave of the organic market gardening movement. He's saying that pretty much every crop, once you've let it establish for 6 to 8 weeks, can withstand any weeds. So if you keep things that you want to grow, keep them weeded for the first month and a half, then they usually be able to take care of themselves. Unfortunately, yeah, I have. Yeah. Anyway, that's all good. I want to. We have about 20 minutes. I will, in 10 minutes, share kind of an overview, and then I'll open it up for questions, and then we will decide when we stop. We started 10 to 15 minutes late, but we'll see how we go. Garden location is really important. You want some sun, you want all these beautiful things, you want a shelter belt, because if you don't have a shelter belt, then the wind carries moisture and then dries out your soil. There's lots of great things, as we said, for biodiversity services. If you've got fruit trees and they're close to your vegetable garden, they will reach the roots to your garden. But the best thing you can do is, instead of think of scarcity, think of abundance. Put wood chips and compost around everything. Let them spread their roots, take what they need from somewhere else, then they will leave your vegetables alone. And then also, it's really fine to have successions in your garden. I know I've designed it so the edges of my garden were planted with fruit trees, and I knew that in 3 to 5 or 10 years' time, I'll need to stop growing in some of those edge beds, or I'll need to start growing some other things that are more tolerant. If there is something I'm sorry that I didn't do, we've planted over 150 fruit trees in our fruit forest alone. I have put them all in the most like, and I've put my vegetables front and center, and my fruit trees all got planted really well with lots of love, but nothing afterwards. I'm really sorry I didn't create more. I didn't let go of some of my vegetable gardens early on, and alicrop them like I'm doing in some other places. So fruit trees, leave space for your vegetable garden, but know that vegetable gardens are so easy to make again. Take care of your soil, but the important thing here is that the main way that your plants are getting their food is not directly from compost. It's not directly as an infusion from the soil. It's because there is a thriving biological community in the soil that synthesizes inorganic matter and makes it available to plants through basically the proliferation of life. So you want your soil to be moist, you want your soil to be full of complexity of life. So you need diversity of plants, you need a good amount of organic matter. Organic matter can come in many ways. One of the ways that I get organic matter besides compost, I basically just grow plants. Plants have this amazing thing that they photosynthesize, create sugars, take them into their bodies, and release them through the roots out of their root system as exudates that they target specific microorganisms that then can synthesize the nutrients they need the most. Grow plants. And the grow biointensive system that we're using really is about creating an abundance of, like the most pleasant place for vegetables to grow, and then they will outperform by 2, 3, 4, up to 6 times more than conventional for the same space. Yes, so there's lots of different types of organic matter. I find that with moisture, soil, just slow aeration, most of our garden beds, we don't fork anymore. We don't aerate because it actually improves the drainage too much, and then our limiting factor to growth not not how much the roots of the plants can go down. It's actually how much moisture, what the constant moisture levels in the soil are. Lots of ways of growing vegetables. This is our main method is in-ground beds. We like it because it's the least energy intensive. I just recently read an article that criticized the issue that sometimes vegetable gardening is actually more carbon intensive than large scale food production. So, of course, we are 100% into small localized food gardens everywhere. But as permaculturalists, we know to reuse, we know to use waste products as paths, we know to reduce the energy intensity. Be careful, and as people as you have the ability, don't be careful not to overinvest in the hard infrastructure of your garden, which you will never be able to recuperate that carbon that was invested in creating the garden through the carbon that you are sequestering or minimizing the pollution for food transport. So yeah, it's an aspect I didn't think about. That's why I think of sharing it. I didn't realize that yeah, some the traditional, or that in many situations, lovely concrete path, or treated or not treated. Yeah. Anyway, you got what I'm talking about. Um, Lots of ways. I like to standardize just because it makes it so much easier to do my planning. So I have I've got different crops growing pretty much everywhere. I don't mind crop rotation as much because I have between 4 to 8 crops in a single bed in a season. I put a lot of compost. I've raised my stable organic matter from 4.5% to 11. We grow everything on contour as much as we can. Yes. I share that for this type of gardening system, the intensive system is about, for every 10 square meters of space, takes kind of 1 hour a week. There's, of course, many different types of changes of things that you can do. Working with slopes, I do a lot of micro terracing. So on contour, as you can see in this picture. In this garden, what we've decided is, instead of micro terracing, I leveled an area for 9 beds or so, and then created a batter, which I've either planted or just left as is, and an angle between 30 to 35%. So sun can reach to the bottom throughout the year, and it just makes it so much easier for me to plant and grow. Something really interesting is that our top garden, I can grow the exact same thing, but as the same as in the bottom garden, but because the elevation is about a 20-meter difference, and the slope of my top garden means that naturally the gravity will take my water down. And so to grow this, whereas in here, I've actually got springs not far from the garden, between where the house and the garden is. The water table is so low that I can use half the amount of water to grow my plant because of the topography. So when you're designing your landscape, think of how can you put your garden beds in an area that gravity will not work against you, or can work towards you. So not put them up on the top of your property, put them lower if you can, above the flood zone, above the frost zone, but key line, around the key line, if you're familiar with that. I believe in intensive coping. I can give more from what I'm taking, and I can just produce more and more and more and more. My limitation is time. This is the wood chip experiment I showed you a bit before. Worked really well. I can talk more about it. We companion plant, we interplant. Our focus though is on production, and we know that interplanting and companion planting has different barriers. Generally, we put about 5 centimeters of compost a year, either when we prepare a new bed or as if in our tomatoes as they grow. We use cloches, we use direct seeding, we use transplants. We generally grow on our own seedlings. Lots of things that we care about, as all of you know. Building resiliency and managing time in the garden is really important. Our general approach to the pest and disease is precautionary, so we try and focus on a healthy ecosystem and using physical barriers. And so we don't use pesticides, like any chemical pesticides, herbicides, fungicides. And one of the reasons I love talking about onions so much is I grow every year our onion supply. And in New Zealand Grower, a few years ago, the horticultural magazine for vegetable growers, said we've reduced the amount of chemicals we're putting on our onions. We're only using 5 different types of chemicals, and only 15 pesticides sprays a season, 15 herbicides sprays a season, and 20 fungicides sprays a season. It is ridiculous. When I had one of participants in one of the workshops told me that her father used to be a commercial onion grower, and that when they've stopped doing the crop rotation as part of their growing system and moved to growing in the same area every year, then the amount of chemicals needed to go up so much. She's seen it in her lifetime. And so we can have amazing, productive, organic permaculture style gardens if we build that resiliency and we take the things that you know and that I've just reminded you over here. So yes, I have developed, I think my ecosystem now is robust enough that if in the beginning I needed to bring parasitic wasps to help me control aphid outbreaks, which happens if you plant a few thousand lettuces, because if you want to produce food. I think besides always identifying why is there aphids here, why is this a problem, how can I prevent this from happening next time, and refining that, I've also created an ecosystem that there is a dynamic there's a term, dynamic equilibrium of pests and diseases. So unlike a chemical system that they look at like zero, no tolerance for pest and disease, I want the pests to be there. Disease, not as much. Pests, for disease, I use, there's just no choice. For long-term crops that have blight or other fungal diseases, using disease-resistant varieties, mostly they have to be hybrids because the commercial companies don't. So they can be organic hybrids, they can be untreated hybrids, but the seed breeders that are putting hundreds of millions of dollars into developing lines do not want to create open pollinated lines that everybody can save. They want to have some rights, although they don't need the hybrid. Really, they just want it as a money making. There is not enough growers that can afford to develop disease resistancy in open pollinated vegetables. So I know that if I grow this variety of courgettes versus this variety of courgettes, I can have absolutely everything the same. The hybrid one would produce triple the amount than the open pollinated one for the reason alone that it has better disease resistance, so it's not dying as early. You can use chemicals to suppress it from the open pollinated. You can create a completely catered environment that maybe that vegetable can survive with a lot less pressure, so you can change the environment. But most of the summer vegetables that we are growing here in New Zealand are not adapted for our summer. They don't want to have a drop from the sky. They come from Mediterranean places that like climates that there's no rain from the sky for about 5 to 6 months of the year. And whenever the water droplet goes on the leaf of tomatoes, blight comes in. And you can grow them under cover like we do, that helps. But I think we don't want to have seas of plastics everywhere. So we've got lots of different tools in our boxes. And going back to our pest and disease, so pests, if I want to have all my predators there, and I want always to have something that they can eat. So I don't want to starve them. So I'm happy to have some levels of disease pests, sorry. Whenever I see some aphids, I'm not going to go and buy aphids. I'm going to look, parasitic wasps that eat the aphids. I'm going to wait and see if I can see that it's not growing as a problem and can stop, then I will just do, like if it can self-regulate, that's great. If I see after a few weeks that it's not, then I will do something more dramatic. But as I said, for the last 4 years, I hadn't need to do that. Rob, please. Yes. Awesome. Completely. And I've done things like that before. My problem and I think the smaller you are, so actually, you think, oh, those bigger growers, they do things better than us. The smaller you are, and I'm not saying anything about the context of your garden, you can have more complexity and you can fine tune what each of your things need. For my scale, I just don't want, besides not wanting to, like, I don't mind putting milk on my vegetables or even baking soda in a can. I just personally don't have time or interest. I do prune the leaves all the time. Our courgettes usually reach 3 meters long by the end of the season. They live from August all the way into April. We get huge amounts of courgettes. And yes, so maybe I will revisit this. I think, or I'll emphasize again that with open pollinated varieties, you just need to be more onto it. And as a commercial grower, that was hard for me to manage. I'm almost finished. And then I'll open it up for questions. So just like we want a hedge, we also want ventilation. And I've talked about the other things, caring for the soil. That's the most important part. I will have copies of our books here if anybody would want to purchase, and we've got FPOS. You can visit our website, sign up to our newsletter and see things we're doing on our social media. We try and post at least once a week and share different things that are happening on the farm. And yeah, um, thank you all so much.